Karoline Leavitt, at 27, is the youngest White House press secretary in history, a devout Catholic with unwavering loyalty to President Donald Trump. Raised in a Catholic environment, her faith has forged her into a steadfast conservative warrior, resolute in her values of family life and national security. Today, however, Leavitt is preparing to step into a fierce battle on the stage of The View, where she faces insults targeting the passing of Pope Francis, a pontiff revered by millions. The stage glows under bright white lights, and the atmosphere is electric with the audience's applause, ranging from loyal fans to the merely curious. The hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Sarah Haynes, sit confidently, their sharp smiles masking provocative intentions. They are debate masters, notorious for their left-leaning stance and biting questions. Today, their target is Karoline Leavitt, a woman with fierce loyalty to Trump and a deep Catholic faith. The passing of Pope Francis, which has shaken the world, leaves behind a legacy of compassion, advocacy for immigrants, and calls for social justice. When The View, a show known for its liberal stance and criticism of Trump, is accused of mocking the Pope's passing, Leavitt decides to take action. With the fire of faith and razor-sharp rhetorical skills, she is ready to defend Pope Francis's legacy and the honor of the Trump administration. In this high-stakes television battle, she fights not only for her Catholic faith but also for the sacred values the Pope inspired. As she steps onto the stage, her blush-pink suit accentuates her youthful yet serious demeanor. Her eyes scan the hosts with a mix of caution and defiance, knowing she was invited to discuss Trump's policies on trade and borders, but the sensitive timing suggests a trap. The View often exploits emotions to unsettle guests, and Leavitt suspects they'll use the Pope's legacy to attack. She sits down, back straight, ready. The upbeat theme music plays and the audience claps. Whoopi speaks first, her voice low, but loaded with intent. "Welcome, folks. We have Karoline Leavitt, the youngest press secretary in history." She pauses, eyeing Leavitt. "We'll talk Trump policies, but first, a hot topic, the passing of Pope Francis." The audience falls silent and a few nod. Leavitt keeps her face calm, her hand lightly gripping the chair. Joy Behar leans forward, a sly smile on her face. "Karoline, you're Catholic, right? Pope Francis just passed, and he loved talking about things like social justice, protecting immigrants. But do Americans really care? I mean, he's in the Vatican, so far away." The audience chuckles, but Leavitt doesn't flinch. "Joy, if you're going to talk about the Pope, do it with respect," she replies, her voice firm. "He just passed, and millions of Americans are praying. He wasn't just in the Vatican. He was a beacon of compassion, inspiring the world." The audience claps lightly, and Behar raises an eyebrow, surprised by the confidence. Sunny Hostin jumps in, her tone serious but sharp. "Karoline, Pope Francis criticized harsh immigration policies like Trump's border wall. As a Catholic, how do you reconcile working for him? Does your faith ever waver?" The question is a dagger meant to corner Leavitt. She smiles, her eyes blazing. "Sunny, the Pope called for compassion, and Trump delivers it, practically. Secure borders, protect people and jobs, help the poor. My faith doesn't waver, it guides me every day." The audience murmurs, some nodding. Hostin leans back, her smile strained. Whoopi cuts in, her tone patronizing. "Karoline, you talk a good game, but what's the reality? The Pope was a beautiful symbol, but he didn't change U.S. policy. Trump does the opposite, cutting welfare, prioritizing the economy. Do you think he and the Pope had the same goals?" She tilts her head, expecting Leavitt to stumble. "Maybe you should check your facts, Whoopi," Leavitt retorts, her voice tinged with sarcasm. "Trump created millions of jobs, lifting the poor out of hardship. That's real social justice the Pope inspired, and we turn inspiration into action. If you think he was irrelevant, millions of Americans are proving you wrong." The audience laughs loudly. Whoopi falters, caught off guard by the swift counterattack. Joy Behar, refusing to back down, raises her voice. Karoline, come on, the Pope is gone, and I bet nothing changes. He talked about climate change, but Americans care about gas prices, jobs. He was an idealistic old man, not realistic. Don't you think so? Her words are like a punch aimed at belittling the Pope. Leavitt takes a deep breath, her eyes blazing. Joy, mocking someone who just passed, who dedicated his life to God, is shameful, she says, her voice slow but powerful. He didn't just talk, he acted, from cleaning up the Vatican to bringing hope to the poor. If you think that's idealistic, look at the millions mourning him. The audience erupts in applause, some standing. Behar falls silent, her smile fading. Sarah Haynes, trying to salvage the moment, speaks up. Karoline, we just want to understand. You're a Catholic working for Trump, whose policies differ from the Pope's. Do you ever wonder where your faith is leading you? Leavitt leans forward, her voice confident. Sarah, my faith leads me to truth and responsibility. Trump builds a strong America, giving people jobs, security. That's how I live my faith, not questioning, but acting. The audience claps. Haynes nods, but her eyes betray unease. Sunny Hostin tries again, her tone sharper. But Karoline, the Pope talked about unity, while Trump divides with his speeches and policies. Do you think he harms the Catholic values the Pope championed? Sunny, unity doesn't mean avoiding truth, Leavitt replies, her voice cutting. Trump fights for forgotten people, workers, farmers. The Pope called for justice, and we deliver justice with a strong economy. If you see division, look at the millions being helped. The audience claps louder. Hostin doesn't respond, the studio now feeling like an arena. The air is thick with the clash between Karoline Leavitt and the hosts. The opening applause has faded, replaced by a tense silence, as if the audience is awaiting an explosive moment. The hosts sit upright, their eyes sharp, forced smiles hiding their determination. They realize Leavitt isn't easily shaken, but they have no intention of stopping. New questions, sharp as blades, are thrown to rattle her Catholic faith and loyalty to Trump. Leavitt, in her striking blush-pink suit, remains composed, her eyes burning with fire, ready to counter every attack. Joy Behar, with her familiar mocking tone, starts again. Karoline, you talk a good game about defending Pope Francis, but let's be honest. He criticized harsh immigration policies like Trump's border wall. As a Catholic, how do you reconcile working for a president who goes against the Pope's teachings? Leavitt leans forward, her gaze unwavering. Joy, Pope Francis called for mercy, and Trump shows it by protecting Americans, she replies, her voice clear and confident. Secure borders stop crime and drugs, protecting working families. At the same time, we create millions of jobs, helping the poor, including legal immigrants, live better lives. That's how I live my faith, compassionate but responsible. The audience claps lightly, some nodding, while Behar crosses her arms, her eyes showing displeasure. Sunny Hostin, with the sharp tone of a lawyer, continues. Karoline, the Pope's death yesterday is all anyone's talking about. He pushed controversial reforms in the Church, like welcoming gay people or financial transparency. Many conservative Catholics say he went too far. Now that he's gone, do you think this is a chance for the Church to return to traditional values instead of those divisive changes? Hostin's question is a trap, forcing Leavitt to choose between supporting the Pope or conservatives. Leavitt smiles slightly, her gaze steady. Sunny, Pope Francis cleaned up Vatican finances, bringing the transparency you all demand from governments, she replies, her voice smooth but sharp. He didn't abandon tradition. He protected the Church by making it stronger. As a Catholic, I respect his efforts, and I believe the Church will keep growing on a solid foundation. His death isn't a chance to reverse. It's a reminder to live faith courageously. The audience erupts in applause and Hostin leans back, unable to find a gap to counter. Whoopi Goldberg, with a stern expression, jumps in. Karoline, you talk about respect, but let's get real. Americans are busy with jobs, bills, daily life. They don't care about a pope in the Vatican, do they? He's just a distant symbol with no impact on American politics or Trump's policies. Agree? Leavitt holds her ground, her eyes steady, her voice unyielding as the conversation continues to unfold. Karoline dedicated her life to God, and she speaks with a slow but powerful voice, saying that it's shameful. He didn't just talk about it, he acted, cleaning up the Vatican, bringing hope to the poor. If you think that's idealistic, just look at the millions mourning him. The audience erupts in applause, some even standing, but Bihar falls silent, her smile fading. Sarah Haynes, trying to salvage the moment, speaks up. Karoline, we just want to understand. You're a Catholic working for Trump, whose policies differ from the Pope's. Do you ever wonder where your faith is leading you? Leavitt leans forward, her voice confident. Sarah, my faith leads me to truth and responsibility. Trump builds a strong America, giving people jobs and security. That's how I live my faith, not questioning, but acting. The audience claps, but Haynes's eyes betray unease. Sunny Hostin tries again, her tone sharper. But Karoline, the Pope talked about unity, while Trump divides with his speeches and policies. Do you think he harms the Catholic values the Pope championed? Sunny, unity doesn't mean avoiding truth, Leavitt replies, her voice cutting. Trump fights for the forgotten people, workers, farmers. The Pope called for justice, and we deliver justice with a strong economy. If you see division, look at the millions being helped. The audience claps louder. Hostin doesn't respond, and the studio now feels like an arena, the air thick with tension. The applause fades, replaced by silence, as if the audience is awaiting an explosive moment. The hosts sit upright, their eyes sharp, forced smiles hiding their determination. They realize Leavitt isn't easily shaken, but they have no intention of stopping. New questions, sharp as blades, are thrown to rattle her Catholic faith and loyalty to Trump. Leavitt, in her striking blush-pink suit, remains composed, but her eyes burn with fire, ready to counter every attack. Joy Behar, with her familiar mocking tone, starts again. Karoline, you talk a good game about defending Pope Francis, but let's be honest. He criticized harsh immigration policies like Trump's border wall. As a Catholic, how do you reconcile working for a president who goes against the Pope's teachings? Leavitt leans forward, her gaze unwavering. Joy, Pope Francis called for mercy, and Trump shows it by protecting Americans. She replies, her voice clear and confident. Secure borders stop crime and drugs, protecting working families. At the same time, we create millions of jobs, helping the poor, including legal immigrants, live better lives. That's how I live my faith, compassionate but responsible. The audience claps lightly, some nodding, while Behar crosses her arms, her eyes showing displeasure. Sunny Hostin, with the sharp tone of a lawyer, continues. Karoline, the Pope's death yesterday is all anyone's talking about. He pushed controversial reforms in the church, like welcoming gay people or financial transparency. Many conservative Catholics say he went too far. Now that he's gone, do you think this is a chance for the church to return to traditional values instead of those divisive changes? Hostin's question is a trap, forcing Leavitt to choose between supporting the Pope or conservatives. Leavitt smiles, slightly, her gaze steady. Sunny, Pope Francis cleaned up Vatican finances, bringing the transparency you all demand from governments, she replies smoothly. He didn't abandon tradition. He protected the church by making it stronger. As a Catholic, I respect his efforts, and I believe the Church will keep growing on a solid foundation. His death isn't a chance to reverse things. It's a reminder to live faith courageously. The audience erupts in applause. Hostin leans back, unable to find a gap to counter. Whoopi Goldberg, with a stern expression, jumps in. Karoline, you talk about respect, but let's get real. Americans are busy with jobs, bills, daily life. They don't care about a pope in the Vatican, do they? He's just a distant symbol with no impact on American politics or Trump's policies. Agree? Leavitt locks eyes with Whoopi, her gaze blazing. Whoopi, millions of Americans prayed for the Pope yesterday. Did you see the posts? On social media? She retorts, her voice carrying a hint of light sarcasm. He wasn't just a symbol. He was a flame of inspiration, urging people to live with compassion and responsibility. His influence reaches far beyond the Vatican, and I'm proud to work for a president who turns that inspiration into real action for Americans. The audience claps fervently, some standing, while Whoopi shrugs, trying to mask her discomfort. Leavitt doesn't just answer, she turns each question into an opportunity to defend both her Catholic faith and the Trump administration. On immigration, she emphasizes, the Pope called for mercy, and Trump protects people with secure borders, creating jobs for the poor. That's how we bring compassion to life. On church reforms, she asserts, the Pope cleaned up Vatican finances, something you demand from governments. He didn't divide. He built a stronger church. And on the Pope's influence, she fires back, millions of Americans prayed for him yesterday. Didn't you see it on X? He was a flame, not just a symbol. Each of Leavitt's responses is a precise, powerful counterstrike, forcing the hosts to retreat. The audience, initially silent, now claps with growing enthusiasm, some even shouting her name. Behar, Hostin, and Goldberg exchange glances, their unease clear as Leavitt dismantles their attack strategy. Haynes, with a forced smile, tries to keep the mood light, but her eyes betray anxiety. Leavitt, with unshakable confidence, sits calmly, her lips slightly curved, as if she knows she's commanding the battle. The audience, swept up in the intense clash, sits riveted. Early murmurs give way to expectant silence. The hosts lean forward, their faces a mix of defiance and worry. Leavitt's razor-sharp answers have rattled them, but they're not ready to concede. Sensing a chance for a decisive blow, they launch their boldest attack, targeting the fresh pain of Pope Francis's death to shake Karoline. Joy Behar, her tone dripping with contempt, seizes the moment. Karoline. Drop the sanctimonious act. Pope Francis was just a politician in a white robe, preaching pretty ideals that don't work in the real world. He died yesterday. It won't change. A thing. Next week, people will forget him. The audience gasps. Some shake their heads. Behar's words land like a slap and her smirk widens, daring Leavitt to crumble. Sunny Hostin follows, her voice cold and calculated. Karoline, you claim to be a devout Catholic, but your faith seems out of step with the Pope. He called for peace while Trump stokes conflict with divisive rhetoric. Do you really believe you're living by his teachings? Or are you just using faith to cover for politics? The question is a dagger aimed at Leavitt's consistency. Whoopi Goldberg, with a piercing stare, cuts in. Be honest, Karoline. The Pope was a nice image, but he had no real influence here. Americans care about money and jobs, not some old man in the Vatican. Don't you think he was just an empty symbol? But Leavitt doesn't falter. She stands, her eyes burning like a torch. Her voice rings out powerfully, commanding the studio. I came here to speak the truth, and I won't let you smear the legacy of a man who just passed. A man who dedicated his life to God and humanity. Pope Francis wasn't a politician, not an empty symbol. He was a flame of compassion, a light guiding millions through darkness. She pauses, her gaze sweeping the audience, drawing them into her words. During the COVID-19 pandemic, when the world was gripped by fear, Pope Francis stood in an empty St. Peter's Square, praying for humanity. He released doves of peace, bringing hope to broken hearts. He defended the vulnerable, the poor, immigrants, the forgotten, not with empty words, but with action. His recent Easter homily called for peace in Gaza, a reminder that war isn't the answer. He touched millions, not just Catholics, but anyone yearning for justice and compassion. Leavitt takes a step, her voice sharpening. You dare mock such a man just hours after his death. You call him a politician in a white robe, but he did what many politicians never do. He gave real hope. You say he had no influence? Open social media. Millions of Americans are praying, sharing their grief, because they saw in him a father, a guide. By mocking him, you don't just insult him, you insult the millions mourning him. That's unacceptable. Not today, not ever. Leavitt pauses, her gaze locked on Bahar. You want to talk about my faith? I'm a Catholic, and my faith teaches me to stand for truth, for justice, for the forgotten. The Trump administration, which I'm proud to serve, does exactly that. We build a strong America where workers have jobs, families have security, and everyone has a chance to rise. Trump doesn't divide. He unites those abandoned by the system, from factory workers to farmers. You may not like his style, but you can't deny his heart, a heart for the people. Leavitt raises her hand, her voice lowering but brimming with power. Pope Francis taught that we can disagree, but we must never deny the mission of compassion. You're free to disagree with him, with Trump, or with me, but when you... Mockery of a man who had lived to serve. She didn't just fail at debate. She failed at humanity. Karoline Leavitt stood firm in her conviction that Pope Francis's legacy would endure, and she would continue to live her faith not through words, but through action every single day in her work for this country. The crowd erupted in applause, many standing, some shouting their support. Karoline stood tall, her back straight, her eyes fixed on the hosts like a warrior delivering a decisive blow. Sonny Hostin, with a forced smile, tried to respond. Karoline, I maybe didn't fully understand the Pope. You're right, he had a huge impact. It was a small admission of surrender, but her eyes still held unease. The applause surged again, the audience leaping to their feet, some calling out, Karoline, in fervent support. A woman in the front row wiped away tears, moved by Karoline's impassioned defense of the Pope's legacy. Caught off guard by the crowd's intensity, the hosts exchanged anxious glances. Whoopi Goldberg, trying to regain control, raised her hand for silence. All right, that was impressive," she said, her voice strained with forced humor. "Karoline, you've made your point. Now let's talk about something more practical, like Trump's tax policies." Her attempt to change the topic was blatant, a desperate escape from the corner Karoline had painted her into. Karoline, still standing resolute, didn't miss a beat. "Whoopi, before we talk taxes, let's remember the core," she replied, her voice calm but commanding. "The compassion. Pope Francis championed lives in Trump's economic vision, cutting taxes, slashing regulations, opening opportunities, and putting millions into stable jobs. That's practical mercy, giving people dignity through work." Her words were sharp and deliberate, keeping the focus on the narrative she wanted to tell, linking Trump's agenda to the Pope's call for justice. The crowd erupted once again, cheers drowning out Whoopi's attempt to interrupt. Joy Behar, visibly flustered, tried to cut in. "Karoline, that's a way of—" But Karoline raised her hand, silencing Behar. "Not a way of, Joy. It's the truth," Karoline asserted. "Trump's economy lifts up the abandoned just as the Pope urged." The crowd roared. Behar slumped back in. her chair, her smirk turning into a frown. Hostin and Haynes remained silent, their initial aggression extinguished by Karoline's dominance. Karoline sat with unshaken composure while the hosts awkwardly shifted topics, their authority diminished by her resolute stance. Meanwhile, the drama in the studio exploded, and the social media world on X erupted with reactions, making Karoline's performance a focal point. Posts flooded the platform, amplifying her clash with the hosts. One user, with thousands of followers, wrote, "Karoline Leavitt Schools. The View on Respect, defending the Pope's legacy like a warrior. Take notes, Joy Behar." The post garnered thousands of likes, with conservatives praising Karoline as a bold voice for faith and truth. Catholic priests shared her words, saying they honored the Pope's heart, and she became a beacon for devout youth. Hashtags like Mjar Karoline V's The View and You Honor the Pope spread quickly with clips of her speech shared widely. However, liberals fiercely struck back. One progressive influencer posted that Karoline's sanctimonious act on The View was just Trump propaganda, accusing her of twisting the Pope's message to fit a MAGA narrative. The post sparked a heated debate, with some accusing Karoline of using faith to cover up Trump's divisive policies. Despite this backlash, Karoline's supporters dominated the conversation. Their posts amplified calls for respect, drowning out the dissent. The social media storm mirrored the intensity of the studio, turning Karoline's moment into a cultural flashpoint. Stepping away from the glaring studio lights, Karoline found a quiet moment of stillness. Her mind drifted back to the profound experiences that had shaped her into the woman she was today. The battle she just waged on live television wasn't just a clash with the hosts. It was the culmination of a long journey of faith and resilience, sparked by the teachings of Pope Francis. His passing, just the day before, had cut deep into her heart, but it had also fueled her resolve to stand up and defend his legacy against the mockery she knew was coming. In the quiet, Karoline reflected on the moments that had forged her. As a student at St. Anselm College, she sat in her small dorm room, the desk lamp casting light on the pages of Laudato Si', Pope Francis's encyclical on humanity's responsibility to protect the planet. His words, calling for compassion and care for the vulnerable, felt like a fresh breeze through her soul. He didn't just speak about the environment, but about how each person must act to bring justice. "I felt like he was speaking directly to me," she recalled. Laudato Si' planted the seed of her belief that faith wasn't just about prayer, but about practical action to change the world. That belief was reinforced by Pope Francis's 2025 Easter homily, which called for peace in Gaza and a world beyond hatred. Karoline watched the homily from the Trump campaign office, feeling his courage. "He taught me that faith is about engagement, even in the face of hardship," she thought, her heart pounding. Those moments, from the pages of his writings to his sermons, became guiding lights, enabling her to stand firm in the face of mockery. When news of the Pope's death spread, Karoline knelt before a small altar in her Washington, D.C. apartment. The flickering candlelight illuminated a statue of the Virgin Mary as she whispered a prayer. "I felt like I'd lost a guide," she recalls, her voice trembling slightly. But in that stillness, she sensed an invisible connection through faith, as though the Pope, though gone, was still urging her to carry on his mission. "I prayed for strength to defend what he believed in," she says, knowing that The View would try to smear his legacy. That night, she posted on X, "Pope Francis was a light of compassion. We must live his spirit." Her simple words inspired thousands, bolstering her resolve as she stepped into the television battle. She emerged as a formidable strategist, confronting the liberal media with sharpness and no compromise. Her loyalty to Trump, combined with her deep Catholic faith, made her a powerful voice for young conservatives who saw her as a role model in defending traditional values against the progressive tide. After her blazing confrontation on The View, Karoline didn't just leave the studio with a personal victory. She ignited a firestorm of debate across America. her fight to defend Pope Francis's legacy against mockery and affirm her loyalty to Trump transcended the television screen, becoming a focal point of media and politics. Within hours of the show, major media outlets analyzed Karoline's performance, each through their own lens. Fox News enthusiastically praised her, calling her a fiery young voice standing up for faith and truth. CNN, however, took a critical approach, accusing her of dodging substantive questions and using faith to mask Trump's controversial policies. Catholic outlets like the National Catholic Register hailed her as an icon for young Catholics unafraid to challenge secular media. In the Trump administration, Karoline was quickly hailed as a rising star. President Trump, known for his blunt tweets, posted, "Karoline Leavitt is a star. She silenced The View and defended our faith. Proud to have her on the team." This post garnered millions of views, cementing her image as a loyal warrior. Other Trump team members shared clips of her speech, turning her into a symbol of resilience within the administration, further solidifying her stature and reinforcing Trump's message of standing up to the left-leaning media. Studio and the White House echoed with Karoline Leavitt's voice, resonating through communities and politics alike. As press secretary, she used that spotlight to promote messages of faith and unity, emphasizing Trump's policies supporting workers and protecting religious freedom. She spoke at Catholic events, sharing how Pope Francis personally inspired her and encouraging young people to boldly live their faith. Her speeches, rich with emotion and sharp reasoning, drew thousands, especially Gen Z, who saw her as a role model navigating a divided world. Leavitt not only elevated the Trump administration's image but also offered hope to those who felt their faith was under siege in modern politics. Her appearance on The View became more than just compelling television. It ignited a national conversation about faith, identity, and politics. Facing off against seasoned hosts, she turned the moment into a powerful expression of loyalty to both President Trump and her Catholic faith, defending Pope Francis's legacy against mockery. Just hours after his death, her response didn't just silence the room, it sent a resounding message that faith can still be a guiding light amid political chaos. Her passionate speech and the explosive media fallout etched her name into the cultural narrative, making her an icon for a rising conservative generation willing to defend what they hold sacred. As the world grieved the Pope's passing, she confronted criticism head-on, transforming the segment into a tribute to the compassion and justice Pope Francis represented. It wasn't just a rebuttal to liberal media commentary, it was proof that faith can be a driving political force. As a devout Catholic, Leavitt showed how values like dignity and responsibility, championed by Pope Francis, could align with Trump's policies, from job creation to national security. She defended the Pope's memory while affirming that young Catholics have a role in shaping the country's future, challenging assumptions that religion has no place in public policy. In an era marked by polarization, she showed that courage, grounded in faith, can bridge divides. The impact of that confrontation will linger, especially among Gen Z conservatives. She became a symbol for youth willing to face skepticism head-on, embracing faith not as a burden, but as a wellspring of strength. Her speeches lit up social media and inspired thousands of young Catholics to live their beliefs with confidence. One college student posted on X, "Leavitt showed me we can be devout and strong," a sentiment echoed by Catholic schools and associations that soon invited her to speak. By standing up for Pope Francis, she not only defended an individual, but also reinvigorated pride within the Catholic community, especially among those feeling sidelined in progressive circles. Her story proves that young people can shape politics by staying true to their values. Her confrontation on The View reflected deeper tensions in American society, between culture and conviction, politics and faith. Reactions ranged from Fox News admiration to CNN criticism, highlighting just how polarized the nation remains. Still, Leavitt remained unshaken. She met Joy Behar's mockery, that the Pope was merely a politician in a white robe, with a powerful speech citing the Pope's efforts during COVID-19 and peacebuilding in Gaza. Her response reminds us that even in everyday life, whether in debates at work or discussions online, we can respond to ridicule with grace and clarity. Praying for strength before her appearance, Leavitt modeled the power of leaning on personal values, faith, family, or principles when under fire. In a time when public figures are often praised or pilloried with equal intensity, her example teaches us to listen, but never lose our identity. Just as she linked Trump's policies to the Pope's compassionate vision, we too can find common ground in shared values like justice and human dignity. Let Leavitt's story inspire you. Live with conviction, defend what's sacred, and strive for unity, even in disagreement. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned as we continue to follow Karoline Leavitt's journey of standing up for faith and truth.